Justin Dunk joining us from 3DownNation.com. Lots to get to with him. Hey, Jay, do you travel a lot? Isn't it a pain in the butt trying to get everything into your shaving kit, or is it just me?
It used to be, and I could see why that would be useful for Manscaped, but I just go with an old-fashioned razor now. It's much smaller to get around.
There you go. Gotcha. Can you believe the furor over Chad Kelly not starting tonight for the Argos? Wow.
I can believe it, but I don't understand it. The Argos are solely focused on winning a Grey Cup, Roddy. So I'm with you on this. I've seen the show and your comments on it. All Toronto cares about is winning a CFL championship. I would put this mistake and the hype being taken out of this game on the league office and the schedule maker. This game, Roddy, should have started the CFL regular season.
Yeah, absolutely. But here we are. Like, do you actually think we're going to go back to the balanced schedule? I complained about it. Nobody ever listens. They don't ever listen. Do you think we'll go back to balanced schedule and this type of thing? I don't.
I can see a path back to it. I think we're in the schedule we're in now because teams were trying to be prudent with their funds, let's say, as COVID sort of worked its way, I guess, out of the mainstream conscience of our system. It's still around, obviously, but as the teams worked, they were trying to save money on travel costs. So it's a possibility, Roddy, as we continue on here in, I guess, kind of post-COVID life, even though it is still around, post-lockdown life, I'll call it. So I could see a path to it, but I don't know if it's going to happen very soon.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I guess they'll sit down and they'll look at attendance figures and ratings and make a decision based on that, or at least I would hope that they would. But back to tonight's game. It's still voted Canada's Game of the Week by our audience, despite the fact Chad Kelly's not playing, because I think there's a huge curiosity factor. And what do you expect out of Cameron Dukes tonight, who will start at quarterback for the Argos?
Cameron Dukes is very intriguing, and part of the reason that he ended up with the Argos, I heard you talking to Dupont about this before the break, is because of Mike Davis. He played for the Las Vegas indoor team down there, and Davis had coached with the Argonauts before taking that head coaching role with Las Vegas. That's the connection. So the Argos are really high on Dukes and his capability. I don't think it's fair to judge him on that Stampeders game alone, where Chad Kelly was knocked out and Dukes had to come into that game in a flash, because now he's got a full week of taking the number one reps. It's a very deep Argonauts team that I think can be competitive in this game, despite Chad Kelly and some of the other regulars not necessarily suiting up. But Dukes, we got to look at it for what it is. His first career CFL start. He's probably not going to set the world on fire. And if he's not terrible, that's probably a win overall for Dukes in his future.
That's a lot of talk about one game tonight, Argos and Bombers, which is fine. It's a big game, but what's getting the most clicks at 3Down right now? What's hot over there?
Oh, man, there's always a ton of stuff. I think actually what's hot right now is the list of Heck Crichton candidates that my colleague JC Abbott put out. We go back and forth about it behind the scenes, him and John Hodge and JC and I. And if you look at the Canadian quarterbacks on that list, Canadian university quarterbacks, I should say, they are putting up numbers, Roddy. If you want to watch highly entertaining Canadian football and you're jonesing for it and you don't get enough of it from the CFL, or you're sick of these meaningless games at the end of the season, I would highly encourage you to tune in and watch some of these games, particularly tonight in the Bridge City in Saskatoon. That's where I am right now. Garrett Rooker, who for my money might be atop that Heck Crichton Trophy watch list, 10 touchdowns, 1 interception on the season, averaging well over 300 yards per season, spreads the ball around. This guy is legit, and he's got not one but 2 NFL caliber offensive tackles blocking for him, Theo Benedette and Gabriel Manu on the other side. There have been multiple NFL teams come up to see these guys on the campus of UBC, so people need to start paying attention to Canadian university football in our country.
Well, you know what? Speaking of French names, like you just named, we do have a lot of viewers in Quebec, in La Belle Province, watching on Game Plus through Videotron, Rogers, Eastlink, into the Maritimes. And There are big Alouettes fans out there for obvious reasons. And I have said what a turnaround by the Owls under Cody Fajardo and Jason Maas. And people are like, it's not a turnaround at all. They were 500 last year. They're a 500 team this year. It feels to me like they've advanced. How do you feel about the Alouettes this year?
I know where you're going with that, Roddy. It did, especially off the start of the season, but I feel like now they're kind of back into that 500 mold. And I think I know where you're going with this. Everybody after free agency and losing Trevor Harris and Geno Lewis, especially those two big names, Pickett was another one that went to the Argos, Darius Pickett, thought that the Alouettes were going to be bottom of the CFL. So I think their scouting staff, Danny Machocha, need to be commended for finding guys like an Austin Mack and some of the other pieces that have filled in there. Sean Lemon, I thought, brought some added juice to that pass rush, but they haven't been able to compete with the top teams in the CFL, which you ultimately need to do to make any noise in the playoffs. So I think until the Owls show that they're competitive with that upper tier in the league, then they're going to continue to middle around that 500.
Yeah, well, Wally was just on here on Monday and just said, hey, all you got to do is get in. And if anybody would know, it's him. The Alouettes could get hot in the playoffs, and it was Dunnigan who predicted a Winnipeg-Montreal Grey Cup. I was going to send him for a drug test after that, but who knows? Who knows? And he's a sharp guy. Hey, what about the Heat in Ryderville right now? My guy. Wow. Hot, hot, hot.
Is really hot, my man. And I think rightfully so. It seems like the fan base is done with Craig Dickinson. And, he's always treated me very well. So I'm not trying to say this because I have an axe to grind against him. It's just been a long run. And I don't necessarily think his message is always getting through or that he's getting the best out of his players all the time. And you talk to fans in the fan base and they want everybody gone. They want Dickinson, Jeremy O'Day, Craig Reynolds gone. I don't necessarily think that's the smart way forward. I think O'Day probably should get to be able to hire another head coach. Dickinson did get them to 2 West finals. Yes, they did not get to the Grey Cup yet under his reign because I still think there's going to be a shot here going into the playoffs. But the Riders got to play much better ball. It feels like deja vu. Last season, I know they missed the playoffs, but this team does not have any steam going down the stretch here. At least up until this point. They lost in the nation's capital to a Red Blacks team that is barely staying alive in the playoff race. So the Riders need to find some mojo and do it very quickly.
Hey, quickly, so you're doing this Jaguars podcast thing? Tell me about that. That's fun.
That's right, man. It is a lot of fun. It's part of the Believe Network, the Believe in Jaguars show. My main co-host on there is Clay Harbor, former NFL tight end. I should say my main analyst. He's got some great energy on the show, and he's got some inside knowledge because he played for Doug Pedersen with the Philadelphia Eagles. He was in the NFL for a number of years. So covering all the Jaguars stuff, obviously, it kind of came about because I was writing about Nathan Rourke for 3DownNation.com. Believe reached out, and here we are. And the Jaguars go over to London 1-2, playing the 2-1 Falcons. If those records were reversed, you would say it probably would make more sense than anything. And there's a lot of heat, speaking of turning up the heat, on Trevor Lawrence. And I don't think that's right at all. He is still a top 5 graded quarterback by Pro Football Focus through 3 weeks. His O-line needs to play better. And Calvin Ridley has got to catch those juicy passes that Lawrence has been firing in there.
Well, it should be fun to follow from across the pond. You, my friend, have a great call of the Huskies and the T-Birds. That's a wonderful stadium, obviously, Griffith Stadium in Saskatoon when it's jammed. I'm sure it will be tonight. And thanks for the time, JD. Appreciate you.
Bet, buddy. Thanks for having me.